I really hope that we retain this kind of cultural oddity that we still have of communal experiences, of the excitement of opening day.
This is A New Angle, and I'm your host, Justin Angle, marketing professor at the University of Montana. This podcast is my chance to speak with cool people doing awesome things in and around the great state of Montana. We are proudly underwritten by First Security Bank and Blackfoot Communications. All right, folks, welcome back, and thanks for tuning in this week. If you like movies like I do, you're definitely going to like this episode. I got the chance to speak with Peter Giannascoli, the co-president of domestic marketing at Paramount Pictures. It sounds like an awesome job. It is an awesome job. We talk all about the film business, how movies get made, or in many cases not made, and a bunch of other really interesting stuff. Peter was here to visit with our entertainment management student, something he generously does each year, and it was great to get some time with him. I learned a ton about the film industry in this conversation, and I'm excited to bring it to you right now. All right, so we're here today with Peter Giannascoli. Peter, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. It's wonderful to be here in Montana.
Welcome back. How many years now have you been coming to speak in our entertainment management program?
I feel like this is the fifth time I've done it.
Fifth time.
Don't quote me on that, but
Okay.
it feels like around 5. Yeah.
So you are the co-president of domestic marketing at Paramount Pictures. Been in that role, 4 years now?
I've been in this role only for about 2.5.
Okay.
But I've been at Paramount for, it'll be 14 in October.
Wow.
Yeah. So
What a wild 14 years in the movie industry.
it's been, I've seen a lot of change
Yeah.
since I arrived. Yeah. And it was my first job in LA too. So it was, I've seen a lot of change in LA and a lot of change in the film business and television business. And definitely, it has not been a boring decade and a half.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, I want to get into all that, but also sort of, go back to the beginning. And, you were an undergrad in economics at Princeton, if I recall.
That's right.
And worked in management consulting for a bit?
I did 2.5 years of consulting, actually right there in Princeton at a company called ZS Associates that primarily did pharmaceutical industry work.
And that's kind of like a bit of a track out of Princeton, right? You either go to Wall Street, you go to pharma, or you go to consulting or whatever.
Consulting and investment banking.
Yeah,
Those are the
yeah.
two big tracks out of Ivy League schools, or at least it was back then.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure how big tech has gotten these days, but
Right.
back then, when you think about who came on campus to recruit, those are the two big industries. Obviously, Princeton's got a big engineering program, so the engineers do the engineering thing and big pre-med, but those of us who were just kind of looking for jobs, it felt like those were the two main tracks.
Right.
And consulting appealed to me. I didn't treasure my experiences with quantitative stuff in college.
Well put.
I don't think I'm terrible at math, but I definitely it was a lot of effort.
Yeah, you were an economics major.
Correct. Yeah. I was lucky because there was, believe it or not, a math track and a non-math track of economics at that point. I bet there still is. I'm not sure, but I was definitely a firm non-math track econ major.
Okay.
And look, I really enjoyed the economics classes I took. I think by the end of the coursework, junior, senior year, I was kind of starting, when the classes did get more quantitative, I started to feel like, oh boy, this is getting a little bit intense for my taste in terms
Sure.
of the how much math, how much analytics is in these classes. It took econometrics.
Yeah, I was thinking
And it
of
was
that
like,
very word. When
wow.
economics becomes econometrics, it gets a little bit more real.
I made it through, but I didn't feel like, I should get a PhD in economics. I definitely just wanted a job and wanted to kind of move on with my life. But the classes that I really did treasure taking at Princeton junior and senior year were film and video classes.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a professor there at that time named P. Adam Sitney, who was like a real big part of the film avant-garde movement and then kind of became Princeton's only film professor. And I took 2 or 3 classes with him, and he really showed me a lot of movies that opened my eyes to, European art filmmaking, Japanese filmmaking,
Okay.
that, from those glory days of the 60s and 70s when there were just a lot of interesting things happening in the the international art film movement. So and then I took a couple video production classes that I really
Okay.
enjoyed, and so I finished up my degree. But then while I was working in that first job, I kind of had this in the back of my mind, this thought that maybe one day I'll try to get back into film somehow, because I was just super passionate about it and had been since high school. And after a couple of years of consulting, I got promoted, and I had a great experience at ZS. Really, really great, kind people there. I still have friends there. A lot of folks started going to business school that I was.
Yeah, it's kind of the thing. Go for
class.
2 years,
exactly.
And go back for MBA.
Yeah. And I started to see this path before me of going to business school, getting then back into industry, and I wasn't passionate about it. The idea of going to business school I wasn't like excited or energized about it. So I had kind of been doing research about what I could do to go back to school for film, and I found the cinema studies degree at Tisch at NYU, which is a wonderful little program. There were like 38 students in my year, small program. The film production program there, which I would have had a blast doing too. It's more years. It requires that you kind of have enough. At that point, filmmaking was more expensive, I guess, but now probably you could just do it on an iPhone. But at that point, there was a requirement for you to kind of finance your own film project.
Like a senior project.
I just didn't have the resources, and I didn't want to, spend 4 years. So I was able to pay for my own way at NYU in the, year and a half, 2-year degree of the MA, the Cinema Studies MA program, which essentially is like 9 classes and you're done.
So so at that point you're kind of choosing a track within the industry. You're not going to be on the production side. You're going to be on the other side. What is it? How do you even describe that? What adjective do you use?
Really, the only thing that the MA program, I had an amazing time in the program, and I would recommend it to anyone who has an interest in film, because it really deepens your understanding. And to read just what the great minds who have grappled with what film is and film theory, and have that guided by just brilliant professors who are, showing you the right movies and giving you the right readings. I'll never forget it. I will say, professionally speaking, it was not all that valuable.
Okay.
Because after that, I was an intern again. I went back to zero. So for me, it was more like it gave me the space emotionally to kind of get off the track that I'd been on and just kind of blow up my life in the best way and just start over.
Yeah.
And kind of, like I said, deepen my passion for film and increase my commitment level that, okay, I really do want to do something in the world of film. So I did that, and then started applying for internships. And in New York...
That's the path. You get out of grad school, and you're going for internships.
Yeah, so 2.5 years of consulting experience, Ivy League degree, and then a master's from Tisch, and I'm like just trying to find any unpaid internship I can get.
Scratch.
Yeah. So I sent my resume to every company in New York I could think of that had the word entertainment or film in the title. And then I waited for a year.
Wow. Yeah. What are you doing for this year?
So what I did was I ran out of money, and I had to go back to my old firm part-time and just kind of do, lower level work, but I could still do kind of the associate level stuff. And they were kind enough to take me back, and I worked a couple of days a week and kind of paid my rent, and I had kind of dragged out, so I went full time for a year to NYU. Then I kind of was not sure what I was going to do next, so I kind of slowed down. So then it took me ultimately 3 more semesters to finish, because I just kind of wanted to drag it out. I was really enjoying it. I didn't want to be done, was the thing.
I'm familiar with this strategy.
I didn't want to be done.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh, it's only 9 courses total. So I took 6 in 2 semesters. I took 3 and 3. And then I said, well, I don't want to be. So I took 1 over the summer. I took 1 in the fall. I took 1. So I dragged it out. And but there was definitely some panic happening. I said, well, my gosh, what have I done? I don't have any way to make money except this part-time gig that is not really a sustainable thing.
Right.
I'm not hearing back from anybody. I don't know anybody in the
Yeah, are you
business.
taking any informational interviews or doing any networking at this point?
I just had zero connections.
Yeah.
So, NYU, the film programs at these universities are really designed to get you into the PhD track and designed to get you faculty positions.
Okay.
They're not really designed to get you into the business, into a movie studio.
Right.
So I had a really fun experience where I briefly was a research assistant for Paul Schrader, who at that point was working. He wrote Taxi Driver and a bunch of other amazing, iconic films. And his film in this past year I thought was awesome. It's called First Reformed, Ethan Hawke movie. I really loved it. So very briefly, I worked with him, kind of pulling some research together for a book project that didn't actually happen.
Sure.
So they helped me get stuff like that. But when it came to like, okay, I need a job now, they were helpful, but it wasn't like, I'll call a buddy of mine over at, whatever, and we'll get you a job.
Yeah.
So anyway, so after a year of kind of sweating, like, where am I going? I got a call from Miramax.
Okay.
And I remember, her name was Lindsay Nadler. I'll never forget. And I was sitting at ZS, kind of like doing whatever I was doing. And that was the call. And I said, oh my gosh, like,
Here it is.
here it is. This is the moment, right? And of course, I'd heard about Miramax and the legendary reputations of Harvey and Bob Weinstein, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
At that point, they were known as being incredibly difficult and hard-nosed and hard to work with. Obviously,
Sure. I wonder if that was code for other things, maybe.
Obviously, in retrospect, the fact that I was in that building when probably horrible things were happening on floors around me or whatever, it definitely makes me feel pretty gross.
Yeah, for sure.
I ended up working on Team Bob, which was Bob ran at that time the Dimension Films label.
Okay.
Which was
There's
like
a lot of the horror films, right?
Exactly right.
Scream, was that kind of the big?
Exactly. So he did Scream, he did Scary Movie, the kind of the spoofy ones. He did the Spy Kids franchise, and Bob's Dimension films. They were very profitable for a long time. So I was there on Team Bob, working for a guy named Josh Greenstein, who was their head of marketing. So just randomly, I started learning about marketing because that was the internship that I got. My career could have gone any number of ways. I was open to taking any job, and I just walked in one day to their office and they said, you're going to work with Josh. And I said, okay,
I'm here.
Okay, here I am. So I really just put my head down and I said, well, I will do absolutely anything. I've waited for a long time to get in this building, and I will do anything. And I did do it. I mean, I labeled tapes. I got a lot of lunches and coffees.
And you started as unpaid, right?
$10 a day.
$10 a day. Is this kind of an audition type of setup?
The internship programs, at that time there were just a lot of interns around, and I was definitely on the older side.
Sure, yeah.
So a lot of them, I got the sense were just kind of exploring, So I was able to distinguish myself because I was really willing to do anything, and I would not leave the office until everyone else had left. I was just clearly like, okay, I'm in it to win it, guys, and I'll do anything. Most of them were just younger, and they were like, oh, cool, I wonder what it'd be like to intern at a movie studio. Cool, fun. And then, they'd kind of be like, I don't really feel like doing that today. So there wasn't a lot of like...
they didn't have to grind the way you had to get there.
Yeah. Well, they probably weren't sure what they wanted yet.
Sure.
So I was there, kind of on a part-time basis for a couple of years. And then my boss left that job and took a job at Paramount. And he said, you should come be my assistant.
Okay.
And this was back in 2005. And I had this dream of somehow staying in New York and working in the film business, which even at the time I knew was not really realistic, but I wasn't willing to let go of my family and friends, but I really loved movies, and I had this, but maybe there's a way, but there was no way. And now there's even less way because there's just not those jobs in New York. If you want to work in television or whatever, there's plenty of jobs, but in film, it's really LA. So I did a lot of soul searching and moved across the country, knowing no one at all in LA. And, in 2005 in October, I was an assistant at Paramount working for Josh Greenstein. So, and it was a wild ride. You know, I had zero connections. I had zero life. I just really just existed to, you know, be a good assistant and to do whatever it took to, you know, help our little department succeed.
Uh-huh.
And I was lucky in that this was a time of transition at Paramount. When I got there, Brad Gray, who recently passed away, who was my boss's boss for a lot of years. He had just gotten the studio. He was the head of the studio, and we quickly bought DreamWorks, which a lot of amazing movies came in from. And at that point, we then got the right to distribute DreamWorks animation films. So we released Kung Fu Panda and Madagascar films, and even the fourth Shrek film, and that was just a lot of fun to be there for that. And then we also signed a deal with Marvel to distribute their early films. So Disney now owns Marvel, as most people know. But at the time, when they started making films, they were just a production entity. So they needed a studio to distribute the films.
Yeah, can you kind of break down the structure here?
Yeah.
So you're talking about you're buying, DreamWorks. Like, what is a DreamWorks versus a Paramount versus other entities within the...
So DreamWorks was a company that was started by, it's called DreamWorks SKG. So the SKG is Steven Spielberg is the S, Jeffrey Katzenberg is the K, David Geffen is the G. So these are three titans of the film business who set out to create a freestanding movie studio, television studio, and they had their hands in everything. And they made some amazing movies and amazing television shows, and
but they're just producing the content.
They were distributing at that time as well.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And for whatever reason, they I guess they never had the critical mass of films to really kind of support this distribution entity.
Okay.
So we bought them, and we got amazing. Some of them may have been more marketable than incredibly quality-wise. We got to work on Norbit, which was that Eddie Murphy.
Yep.
Blades of Glory, which was the Will Ferrell movie. We worked on. The Transformers at that point was the Paramount DreamWorks joint venture. So we got all of Transformers, which then became
giant,
incredible franchise for us. So, and then we got the right to distribute the animation. Now, the animation company became a publicly traded separate company, DreamWorks Animation, but we had the right to distribute those films. So they would make the films and we would release the films.
Okay.
And it was just a lot of amazing product came through Paramount because Brad and the team made that deal to buy that company. And then the Marvel thing happened. So Marvel had this dream of making, to that point, Marvel had licensed rights for their characters to Hollywood studios to produce films. So Spider-Man was and is released by Sony. And the X-Men films were released by Fox. Of course, now Disney bought Fox, so those X-Men films are going back to Disney. So back in 2006 or whatever it was, Marvel said we should make our own movies, and so they raised a bunch of money and they became a production entity, and they hired a guy named Kevin Feige, who is, now kind of on the all-time list of great producers, who's produced all the Marvel Universe films and has created this incredible universe from nothing, So Paramount had the right to distribute their first film. So when I got there, within a year, all of a sudden I'm hearing about Iron Man, and I'm like, that's cool. And Josh, my boss, he was kind of the hotshot creative advertising guy, so he got that movie. So I cut my teeth on Iron Man.
So you guys got to run marketing for Iron Man.
Yeah.
Wow.
So his role at that point was the creative advertising.
Okay.
Josh then went on to run all of marketing for Paramount, and now he's in charge of worldwide marketing and distribution at Sony.
Wow.
But at that time, we were just doing the creative campaigns, and what a great movie to learn the business on. So I learned on Iron Man. I learned on Transformers. I mean, it was just the timing was really great. So I got to be a part of these films that are still like some of the biggest films Paramount's ever released, just because I got there at the right timing is a big part of it.
For sure.
It's a big part of it.
A New Angle is underwritten by First Security Bank and Blackfoot Communications, two cool companies doing awesome things all over Montana.
I'm Larry Summers, Harvard President Emeritus and former Treasury Secretary. You're listening to A New Angle.
And what's the process of putting together a campaign for a film and deciding of the films that your studio is working on at a given time, what are the ones where we're going to really invest in promotion? What are the ones that we're going to maybe promote a little less or differently? How's that kind of work?
Right. So, a studio will release, let's say a studio releases 15 to 18 movies a year.
Yeah.
You try to have a wide variety of movies for different audiences, different budget levels, and with correspondingly different marketing spend levels. So a film that's targeting kind of a small, let's talk about book clubs. We released a film called Book Club last year, and it really did really well for us. And that was targeted at specifically an older female demographic. And it was made for a very reasonable price. It had great star power for that audience, and we were able to, spend, relatively modest amount of money to target just the kind of older female moviegoers, who then showed up.
Yep.
So contrast that with a film like Mission Impossible, which was another film we had last year, whereas you're spending a lot more money on the movie.
Yep.
And you're spending a lot more money on marketing, and you're really marketing that to everybody.
You're probably doing a whole lot more stuff too with
Yes.
your marketing, merchandising and placements and all this other
Much
stuff.
bigger campaign. And those were just two films that were, both very successful on their own terms with radically different marketing plans.
And you probably know that going in, like a movie like Mission Impossible, large production, giant actors, whereas Book Club, it's much leaner to produce a movie like Book Club, I would imagine.
Correct.
You don't have any explosions to deal with.
Correct.
Or special effects or any of that.
Yeah.
So that has to probably... And are there like formulas and standards of practice that you guys operate by?
A lot of what we do is driven by comp films. So films that we've released in the past or others have.
Okay.
How were those approached? Obviously, everything's changing every year, minute to minute. So you can't just copy what you did before. But when you think about what did we spend on X? That's usually the starting point, and then kind of what's changed in the media landscape. What do we have to adjust? Do we have to spend more on digital platforms because they've grown by 500% since that film? But it helps a lot. It's in Hollywood, there's maybe 105, 110 films that are released wide every year, and every one of those films,
wide meaning mass distribution to screens across the country.
Meaning like typically when you say wide, you mean like 1,500, 2,000, 3,000 screens.
Okay.
Yeah. There's a lot more films that are released on a few screens, but when you're talking about wide release films that have a real kind of healthy marketing campaign against it, it's 100, 105, 110 films a year.
Okay.
And every one of those films is a case study for those of us in the business. So we say, well, if a film worked, how was it sold? How big was the campaign? Where did they, spend their dollars and their time? And it does help a lot to have those reference points. So you're not starting from nothing. I guess that's the same in every business. You're looking to see what worked and how it was approached, and keep it fresh. But just if you have a template to follow, it's a good starting point.
Yeah. And how much are you guys involved in the actual go, no-go decisions with films? I'm sure they bring you and your team in to say, hey, this is a film we can sell.
Yeah. There's a green light process, and all senior execs in the studio are kind of represented in that room.
Okay.
From the marketing team to the home media team to the licensing team, domestic, international, everyone's there, and everyone kind of speaks to the potential of the film in all the different windows, in all the different countries. It really is ultimately the head of the studio's decision. but everyone has a voice in the process, which I think is a healthy process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gosh, I'm just trying to think of like how much the industry is changing and how much
Yes.
your job has changed, probably just in the couple of years you've been in this current role. I mean, how are you thinking about this? Are big screens losing share as platforms like, digital platforms in your home are gaining share? Like, how's that kind of working?
Right. So,
It would seem harder to get people to go to the theater in the
Correct.
current environment.
it's strange, but 2018 was the biggest year we've ever had in the movie business, which is so counterintuitive.
Right.
When you hear about the rise of these streaming platforms, how many more scripted television shows there are now. The guys at FX, John Landgraf and the guys at FX, they really are, they're kind of the watchdog of the volume of television content that's happening.
Yep.
And they put out a report every year, and it's peak TV is a phrase that's been coined lately.
I mean, it kind of feels that way.
Yeah.
For a while, it felt like TV was dead when reality TV was kind of taking over everything. But now, like, the resurgence of such high-quality television is amazing.
So there's like 500 scripted shows now.
Yeah.
There used to be like 250. So, but somehow, despite that, movies are still more popular than ever.
Yeah.
Now, it seems like there's a concentration around the biggest, most expensive branded we call them tentpole type movies, and that's true. But then you look at A Quiet Place, which we had last year, which made a ton of money despite costing very little because it just had a great concept and was executed really well. And wow, all of a sudden you're making hundreds of millions of dollars off this little horror movie. So it's hard to draw a clear conclusion from all of this, other than to say there seems to be something about the movie-going experience that is attractive to the world still. There's something about wanting to get out of your house and go to a theater that so far all of the massive increase in quantity and quality of content that's delivered to the home and to the phone has not replaced. And I think that's great, because when I think about why I uprooted my life and moved to LA and took a flyer on this crazy new adventure of being in the movie business, it was because I had those experiences in movie theaters that were transformative, that truly changed my life, and changed who I am. So I hope that, people will still be able to have those experiences, and they seem to like those experiences. And there's only so much time you can spend in your pajamas on your couch before you have to get out of there and you have to go and just experience the outside world. And I think, I'm proud to work in a business that is providing people that opportunity to escape to get out of their houses, to have a communal experience, to put their phones away for a couple hours and just give themselves over to a filmmaker who's trying to provide them with an experience that they'll never forget. There's something really cool about that. And you can't do that on your phone.
You're right. The social aspect of sharing it in the theater with other people. I can think of a horror movie by yourself versus with others, or anything where there's like visceral response, comedy, horror, are the two I kind of think of. I suppose you can get it through drama and suspense and other categories. Correct.
The rise in these massive tech monopolists that we all talk about, Facebook, Amazon, Google, they'd rather you just spend time at home and on your phone.
Yeah,
because
they're engineering their platforms to keep you there.
They can monetize you there.
Yep.
And that's great. Look, the tech companies have done amazing things in terms of improving people's lives. But I really hope that we retain this kind of cultural oddity that we still have of communal experiences, of the excitement of opening day. It's a new movie. I read it's great. I'm going to schedule my day around this specific
it's like a
piece
scarcity thing. Even though you can go another day, it's still it approximates a live event.
There's something magical and wonderfully human about wanting to be a part of something on opening day or opening weekend, and being able to talk to your friends about it in a way that when you have an unlimited sea of tiles of choice, it's hard for any one of those tiles to become that cultural event.
Sure.
That's worth sharing with loved ones, you know. The other thing that's a little bit more nuanced, which I've been trying to gather my thoughts on for the past couple of years, is I just don't think you can have. It's more difficult to have that truly cathartic, transcendent experience at home versus in a theater. And I think the communal thing is part of it, but I also think it has something to do with the fact that when you've decided, when you've made the choice to say, I'm going to go see what this Spike Lee movie is all about, and I'm going to get myself to a theater, and I'm going to turn off my phone, and I'm going to not worry about what's in the kitchen, and I'm going to not go to the bathroom, and I'm just going to sit here in this seat and stare at this screen and give myself over to Spike Lee and the other filmmakers and see what they've got, see if they can move me. I think that emotionally, you're in a place that's more receptive to the content and to being moved and to having it be a memorable experience for all those reasons. The communal thing is part of it, but it's also just that there's no distractions.
Yeah,
the room is dark. Your phone's in your pocket,
right.
And you've paid for that experience. Mm-hmm. So you're more likely to really give it a fair shake because you're there. You've given them money. You're sitting there. You know, versus
you've given the money and the time and the effort and the focus. You've given a lot.
You've given a lot, so that when that filmmaker delivers, there's a wonderful thing that happens where it's magic. And look, I love Game of Thrones, and I'm excited for Game of Thrones, and I'll watch Game of Thrones voraciously this year. But there is just something about being in that theater and giving yourself over to that experience that I think makes the experience more meaningful.
Yeah, I buy that for sure. But at the same time, I'm thinking about, like, how are you guys thinking about other forces in the marketplace of entertainment, whether it's live events, whether it's virtual reality? I know you do some work on virtual reality. Like, what sort of other tiles are you thinking about in your role at Paramount to complement kind of the key stable of traditional movies?
Right. Well, you know, all companies like Paramount that have IP that we can, intellectual property that we control, we're always looking to how do we monetize this through other channels.
Yeah.
So it's not really my area of expertise. I did work on VR a little bit a few years ago, but definitely there's a lot of people at the studio that are just continually working on how do we translate these brands, these characters, these worlds that we kind of own into other newer emerging platforms. The easiest one to talk about is television.
Yeah.
That Paramount's built over the last, it's pretty new. I think it's 4 years old, from scratch television division that now has many, many exciting shows kind of on the air. And is doing really well. So that's an easy one, you know. And we have this amazing library, and the television group can now say, what about a Jack Ryan TV show?
Yeah.
And now that's
because you own those characters.
Because we own the characters,
right.
Yeah. And prior to having a TV company, the only option was to kind of license those characters out. Now we can. It's not me, but that team can work with filmmakers and writers and really develop these brands into television. Projects. And you know, I know Amazon really rallied around Jack Ryan. It was a massive launch for them, and I think did really well for them. So that's the easiest thing to talk about, because there is obviously a clear path to monetization in television, and there's more shows than ever. And now we're a part of that in the way that we weren't prior. Because what happened was when Viacom and CBS split in 2006, CBS got all the television stuff. And Paramount kept just the movie stuff. So we've had to kind of start over. And we didn't really start over until like I said, 4 years ago. So it's a brand new kind of thing, but they're doing great. That show Maniac on Netflix was from Paramount. 13 Reasons Why. So there's been a lot of really successful shows that have come out of Paramount TV, and I'm proud that they've done so well so quickly.
And another sort of thing I think about, one thing we teach at the business school is sort of differentiation, right? How does that work with a company like Paramount versus your competitors? How do you guys think about brand and differentiation and what the brand stands for and what a Paramount movie is versus a competitor's movie?
Right. So the concept of brand as pertains to a studio, it's a very tricky thing.
Yeah.
We hope that Paramount means this is a movie that's worth going to a theater for, that's of a certain quality, that you're going to go home and feel good about having paid the money to see the film. Other than that, it's hard because it really is in our interest as a studio. If a film will be successful, we have to make it, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's on brand or off, it's important.
So brand does not go down to genre or style or positioning or whatever.
It does for some studios.
Okay.
So a Disney movie means
Disney,
something, right?
Yeah.
So that's why Disney years ago launched this Touchstone label, because they only wanted to apply Disney to the films that were Disney family.
They can make edgier stuff with Touchstone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So Marvel means something. Marvel means, okay, this is a film based on 5,000 characters, millions of pages of brilliant writers and artists thinking about these characters. But Marvel's not a studio. Marvel just is a label that Disney distributes, right? So, there are brands that mean something in the space, but they're usually a level down from the distributor.
Okay.
We're lucky enough to have a deal with Tyler Perry now, where we have the right to distribute and produce his films. That brand means a lot to Tyler's audience, and we're so lucky to have him as part of our family. That means something.
Yeah,
so,
what you're describing sounds a little bit like Procter & Gamble model. Although the Procter & Gamble's done a little bit more corporate advertising lately, but yeah, this family of brands, they kind of all roll up into a singular promise, but each one of them is pretty distinctive in and of itself.
Right. It's not about the umbrella. Like if you ask the average person what Procter & Gamble means, they'd be like Procter and who?
Yeah, exactly.
But everyone knows. Yeah, everyone could probably.
Everybody knows Tide.
Everyone knows Tide. Yeah, I mean, how much money has Tide made over the years?
Oh, yeah.
It's incredible, right?
Just go down the aisle and grab Orange.
It's a durable brand. Yeah.
Yes.
So I think that's a good analogy. Yeah. I mean, if you're lucky enough to have, and by the way, some of the franchises we have kind of become their own brands. Mission Impossible kind of is a brand.
Right. How many are there now? Like 5?
We just released the 6th one.
6th one, okay.
And we've announced that Chris McQuarrie will direct, and Tom Cruise will, of course, produce and star in 7 and 8, which will be made concurrently. So they're going to make 2.
Have you guys invented a time machine for Tom Cruise yet?
So they're going to make 2 at once, and I'm really excited. They're going to come out. We are very lucky to have Mr. Cruise around at Paramount. So we have a Top Gun film with him in 20, which we're so excited about. And then we have Mission 7 and 21 and Mission 8 and 22. So we have 1 a year from Tom for the next 3 years, and it's going to be a wild ride. We're very excited.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So Mission kind of becomes its own brand. What other big? I mean, Transformers was a brand.
Yep.
We released 5 of those films. Then we did a Bumblebee spin-off, but it was still very much in that universe,
part of that brand family,
in that world. You see Bumblebee's face and his yellow, body. You go, oh, okay, Transformers.
Yeah, part of the deal.
So like I don't think there's consumers that say I'm going to go see it because it's a Paramount film.
Right.
But I think we're hoping that our logo denotes legacy, quality.
You certainly see the stars swirling around at the beginning, and it definitely stands for something specific.
We're hoping it makes you feel like this is going to be a movie worth seeing in a theater.
Yeah.
But beyond that, we kind of have to make horror films because they work. Mm-hmm. We have to make comedies because they work. We have to make, book club movies because they work. So if you're saying we're only going to make one kind of movies, you're then saying, well, we're just going to pass on these 5 genres, and you really can't do that, because if a project comes in that maybe is in a genre that you haven't released in a while, I think you got to do it. You think about Crazy Rich Asians, which worked for a variety of reasons for Warner Brothers. It was the first film, in whatever 20 years with an all Asian cast, and that was incredible. But also, there hadn't been a rom-com in a really long time.
Sure.
And I think that was exciting because we've kind of been sitting out the genre for a while because it hadn't been working. But there was an excitement to say, oh, cool, a big screen romantic comedy. I haven't seen one of those in a while, right? So if Warner's had said, well, we don't really do those, that's not really our brand.
Yeah.
That would have been a mistake, right?
Yeah,
because, they would have passed on a very successful project that I think got them a lot of goodwill and a lot of profit.
Yeah, and it would seem like brand means something different, and the skill set that, the way the industry's set up, the skill set that can produce a good rom-com versus a good horror film versus a good suspense thriller, it's not very different across those genres. At least that's my perception.
Well, it is on the filmmaker side for sure,
right? But like at the corporate side,
on
the
corporate side, yeah.
Much.
Well, I mean, I like to think as a marketer that I can sell anything.
Yeah.
But there certainly is a muscle memory that you get from working on a certain kind of movie. So, but yeah, I definitely like to think that we're smart enough and can sell a movie in any genre. So, yeah.
So, Peter, we got to get you on to your next thing.
Sure.
You're here for well, actually, that's kind of what I want to close with. Is how on earth are you here? Why are you here? Why are you chosen to come back to the University of Montana to talk to our students for 5 years running now?
Well, I get a kick out of doing this every year. It's we talked a little bit about my struggles to get into the business,
for sure.
And I grew up near New York, but I grew up in Jersey, deepest Jersey.
Which exit?
135.
Okay.
And I got to tell you, New York felt a long way away.
Yeah.
For me, it felt like, wow, I'm not sure I'll ever be able to make it in the big city, which is silly because it was an hour drive, right?
Sure, but
it
it's
felt
far
like
away,
a million
conceptually.
miles away. So what Jeremy Sauter and I, who I teach the class with every year, what we try to tell the students is like, you can do anything that you want. There's no reason. There's no better people in this city versus wherever you're from.
Right.
It's all just, everyone's got their strengths, everyone's got their weaknesses, and people who succeed are people like me who just like parked their butt in a cubicle at a movie studio and said, I'm not leaving
Right.
until I prove what I'm capable of. And I was lucky enough to have bosses and mentors that identified, that in me. So we try to just say, you probably have to move. You probably have to get yourself to a city that has the kinds of things that you want to do.
Uh-huh.
But once you're there, you can do anything because, there's no 23-year-old that knows everything. You're on equal footing.
Right.
So it's just about being in the right city, being in the right building, and being in the right room, and learning and working hard. And you can do anything. And then selfishly, I get a ton out of talking to students.
Yeah.
I just turned 41, so I definitely, I've definitely out of the youth age of my life as much as I.
Oh, I don't know. You're making me feel old
hate
now.
to admit it, but no. But look, we sell these movies to young people. They still go to the right movies, so it's important that I kind of stay in touch with that.
A little market
demographic.
Research coming up here.
It's a little
in Montana.
market research. Yeah, no. I asked them about how they consume entertainment, and it's amazing how much it's changed even in just the 5 years I've been coming here. I asked people to raise their hand who has a Netflix subscription, who has been to a movie theater in the past 2 months, who, who buys their movie tickets online.
Right.
All these things are changing so fast. So it really helps me to just kind of understand what younger folks are, how they think about our business and what I do all day, which is struggle to get them to buy tickets and go see movies in the theater,
Well, it's awesome to have you here. We're thankful for your wisdom and your dedication to our students, and I'm just really grateful you had some time to stop by the pod and tell us some about your story. Thank you, Peter.
It's an honor to be here every year and to sit with you, and I hope I keep getting invited back.
Well, you're welcome here anytime. Thanks.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, hope you enjoyed that conversation with Peter as much as I did. Coming up next week, we have the next installment in our Sea Change series. It's a conversation with the amazing Brigitte Miranda Freer, the executive director of the Montana World Trade Center and director of operations at Montech. If you don't know what either of those two things are, that's fine. Tune in next week and learn all about it. Thanks for listening to New Angle. We really appreciate it. And we're coming to you from Studio 49, part of the Michelle and Lauren Hansen Media Lab at the University of Montana College of Business. Remember that this podcast was supported by CED, Consolidated Electrical Distributors. These guys pretty much sell anything electrical you'd ever need, but they also hire a ton of our students. If you want to learn more about jobs at CED, visit cedcareers.com. Before we go, I want to thank some important peeps. Executive producer, Stefan Borsum. Producer, Aidan Morton. And interns, Aspen Runkle, Max Gibson, and Ellie Hanasek. Huge thanks to VTO, Jeff Ament, and John Wicks for the tunes. And finally, props to Jeff Meese, our master of all things sound. Finally, if you have any questions, suggestions, comments, insults, whatever, please email me at anewangle@umontana.edu. Help us spread the word, and be sure to use the hashtag #anewangle when you do. Thanks a lot. See you next time.